Good day, fellow geeks. On this week's episode of Geeks of Azeroth, we've got a big patch coming to World of Warcraft to talk about. Overwatch Beta has finally been announced, and a new Murloc pet. All that and more on this week's episode of Geeks of Azeroth. And the intro was supposed to play there, and here it goes. By geeks.
About geeks.
For geeks.
Welcome to Geeks of Azeroth! Hello. Welcome to the show. My name's Tarley, and right next to me in the panel, we've got Britzza.
Hello.
How's it going?
I'm trying to get a little bit higher than you on the pitch.
Good luck.
I'm doing... Yeah, no, I know. I just haven't got the vocal cords for it. I'm doing very well, thanks. I won't talk about WoW just yet, but how are you doing? On this fine day, I think is it fine?
Well, it is finally. Montana's catching up with the time, and it is cold. I am sitting here with my sweater. We have been seeing 80 degrees like up until this week.
Oh, what is that? 80 degrees? What is it? Like 20 odds?
That's about 50 maybe Celsius. I don't know.
50 Celsius. People die.
I don't know then.
Oh dear. Okay, so you're going through the coldest heat wave ever, or the hottest freeze ever. But I'm doing very well, thanks. Otherwise, better than you are over there, clearly.
I guess I need to learn my conversions.
I don't think anyone knows. That's why I've got to ask. I don't know. You are the only country, I think, in the world that uses Fahrenheit. So
we had to be different.
You have to be different. You know, it's just one of those things. But hey. But how are you? Everything else? Right.
Well, so this last week, since we've done a show, I've probably played more World of Warcraft than I have in the last few months.
Same.
And it's for some reason it feels good to play again. I actually am on an RP server now, and everything is totally different.
I do remember you saying you joined an RP server to just test the waters. So
yep.
How's that going? Are you still sticking with the RP, or?
I brought my main character over. I downloaded the My Roleplay add-on. You know, I'm totally getting into it, and it's really different compared to the communities I've been on other servers. Nobody really talks to each other, but you know, this server is just very alive, and everybody's talking and having a good time. So I guess it brings back the good feeling of WoW. Awesome.
You haven't tried to RP a usurper to the Throne of Stormwind or anything like that?
No, I've basically walked around Silvermoon is where the highlight of the RP is on my server, and
really?
Yeah, especially down Murder Row. There are a lot of people RPing in Murder Row.
Really?
Yeah.
I just thought Silvermoon was a dead city. I just never presumed anyone would ever be there. But,
well, if you play on a US, what server is it? Wormrest Accord. Yeah, Horde.
Mm-hmm. Oh, right, okay. Well, there you go, people in the US. I'll have to see. I'll have to go. I tell you what, I'm going to test an RP server. I'll create a Blood Elf and see what it's like over there, because maybe Silvermoon's the place to be for RPers. Who knows? Maybe it's because they can get away from everyone else. That might be
right. Well, and the server is like 95% Blood Elves or something like that. So, yeah, that's where they all like to congregate. And what about you? How's your World of Warcraft been?
I've been in actually kind of the same boat, not RPing, but I've definitely playing a lot more WoW, and in particular, I've just been trying to get achievements and mounts. So last night, I did a poorly timed stream, or at least attempted a poorly timed stream, and apologies for those who asked about it. I couldn't get the resolution up. It looked like it was Minecraft. It was that bad. And I went through a couple of the instances, focused on raid content. If anyone's interested, I posted a screenshot of a list on our Geeks of Azeroth Twitter feed. So check it out and do it yourself if you're interested. But I've just been sort of trying to grind mounts in PvE raids and soloable raids and instances. And last night I picked up the Reigns of the Twilight Drake from Soltharian in Obsidian Sanctum. So that
Very
was
nice.
Yeah, exactly. One down, only 4 million to go, it seems. But still, I have to say, I think Blizzard needs to do something with the drop rate, particularly on legacy raid content. I don't think it's not really worth my time, it seems, to spend an hour and a half grinding through Icecrown Citadel. I mean, I say grinding, I'm literally
Well, it takes you an hour and a half. That's sorry for you.
Yeah, no, exactly. But no, it shouldn't take an hour and a half. But it's it takes a long time to have to go through each boss, run left, run right, and all that sort of thing. And then you're literally still facing like a 0.04% drop chance. And I just think Blizzard, it'd be cool if Blizzard, like, to help promote content, it'd be better if that sort of scaled up a little bit. Maybe it hit a cap, like it only couldn't go above 25%, so you could still have some really bad luck. But I don't know. Maybe
I would almost disagree with that. I think mounts like Reigns of Alar or Ashes of Alar and Invincible. I think those should. I don't know. I think they're good where they're at. Maybe they should increase the damn drop rate. Excuse me, the drop rate of the Halloween mount, the Headless Horseman mount that I've been trying for 6 years. But
well, now's the time. Have you started cracking onto that?
It doesn't open up for us for another 2 hours.
Oh, does it not? Oh, it just shows how much attention I'm paying to how it's in.
But yeah, no, I mean, I agree with the frustration of wanting mounts, but I think that's still just it's part of the allure of the game. You know that this is so rare, and if you finally get it, then my God, I've got this mount that I've tried for so long. I don't know.
That's true. I guess I'm just like being a little kid inside. I want it. I want Mummy and Daddy to buy it for me because I can't get it myself. So, hey.
And personally, I've been doing my own progression. This week, I started actually working on Draenor Pathfinder because I would love to fly around Draenor. So, currently just finishing off Lore Master, which has taken quite a bit because I did it as Alliance and my main is Horde now. So it's basically redoing the entire quest lines.
Fun,
but yeah, that's good. Fun stuff.
It's worthwhile doing. I think I'm going to start chipping away at that as well.
I think the reputations from Tanan Jungle are going to be what takes the longest. But
there are ways to do it. There's some interesting guys on Wowhead to help sort of speed through it at a surprising rate, actually. So, good luck.
Yeah, I'll have to check out those guides. All right, so moving on to the first segment of the show. It's time for News of the Week.
Hey, we recording? Yeah? Okay.
News of the Week.
That's right, it's time for News of the Week, and we've got some really interesting news to talk about so far this week. I know, really? And it's including World of Warcraft news, which is really, really surprising. So we're going to jump right off with patch 6.2.3, a new patch coming to World of Warcraft. And this small little patch, yet again, brings more content than patch 6.1.
Probably more content than Warlords.
No, but this is a very interesting patch. Blizzard has talked about already that they wanted to up the quality of dungeons, make them more important in Legion. But they're already taking steps for making dungeons more important. And Warlords of Draenor with this new patch. First off, they are adding the Cataclysm dungeons to Time Walking, its own Cataclysm Time Walking weekend. And with that, we are going to get Grim Battle, which is the one I am most scared for if they do not do the scaling for, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Stonecore, Lost City of Tol'vir, the Vortex Pinnacle, Throne of Times, and End Time, which they are also adding. The Pit of Sauron from Wrath of the Lich King and Magister's Terrace also.
Yes.
So, very cool stuff there. I'm looking forward to the Cataclysm raids, even though, I mean, it wasn't necessarily that long ago that we were doing Cataclysm, but it'll definitely be cool to do those dungeons again. And the coolest part, I think, and it would be a mount that you can get randomly. Have you seen this mount, Britzza?
It's incredible. It really is, actually. Without going into a discussion on it, this is exactly the bait at the end of the stick that I wanted to keep me going through WoW. It's exactly what I wanted. It is
the mount that we have wanted forever. It is an infinite dragon mount. Here it is up on the screen for anybody watching the video. It is awesome. And it is a random reward. It can drop off of any one of the time walking bosses. So what Blizzard is doing is essentially, like you said, the carrot on a stick. They are just giving us a reason to actually go and play these dungeons, which we just haven't had for quite a while.
And the great thing, like you say, it can come off of any boss, and there's so many of those bosses in that content. I mean, for one, when I saw this announcement, I was just excited for Magister's Terrace. That is so nostalgic for me. I must have spent hours and hours on the Isle of Cardenas, not just trying to get that blooming mount, but just because that's all you could do when you were level 70, or that was the thing to do, when you were level 70, not the only thing. But I love the fact that's coming back. That is going to be a brilliant instance. But on top of that, you've got 20 odd chances to get this dragon a week.
Yeah, so
not a week, but every time.
Yeah, which is awesome. So good on Blizzard for making a really cool mount that is not going to the store. It is earnable by doing dungeons.
The comments actually talked about that. They're like, "What? Blizzard?
It's not a store mount?
No store? What?" It's like, no, it's not a mistake. They're actually not putting it on the store for once.
So moving on with the notes, they are also adding cross-realm mythic rating. So this is, maybe this isn't huge. Maybe it is for people who are attempting mythic rating. This basically allows you to fill that missing gap in your 20-man team with anybody from the game, basically.
And I think... Sorry, go on.
I think it's good news, overall.
I think it's very good news because, listening to recent episodes of CTR, for example, you can hear that those top-end raiding guilds are really struggling to not just push mythic content, but also heroic content. It's just hard to recruit people because, to be honest, the game community is diminishing and it's having its time pulled away. I can only imagine with Halo 5 coming out next week, people are going to drop off for a couple of weeks just to play that. And
it'll be interesting to see the Q3 subscribers, see if we're down under 3 million or something.
I don't think it'd be that bad. I think sub 5's probably nearer, but like you say, maybe it's bounced back. We have no way, but I think certainly helping the raiding scene. Where they've been adjusting bosses, adjusting mechanics, and I think this was something that really needed to happen because you can change the mechanics all you want. You can adjust the bosses. You can scale down difficulties. But at the end of the day, if the people aren't there to play, you're screwed, really. Mm-hmm. So I think this is definitely the thing that's probably, if it can save mythic rating for Warlords, this will be it.
Yep,
definitely.
So yeah, absolutely agree with what you said there. And then also coming on with this patch.
Oh my god, it's back. They're back.
Valor is back. They said no more currency. We don't want any currency.
No more Valor
for Warlords. And then boom, Valor is back, and it's strictly, at least for now, Valor is for item upgrades. So instead of nerfing the content, periodically through the raid, they're just making you stronger, so you can clear heroic Hellfire Citadel easier or mythic Hellfire Citadel easier. So you earn Valor by completing normal dungeon or heroic dungeons, mythic dungeons, and time walking dungeons, and looking for raid. So that is how you'll be earning Valor to upgrade your gear, which is, it's pretty solid. I think it's something that they shouldn't have taken away in the first place. So
I agree, and the upgrade's only a modest 10 item level, which it's not as modest. It could really change some mechanics, but still, it's not going to break the game. And like you said, I've always felt taking out in-game currency wasn't the smartest move. I felt they should have just adjusted it. But it's nice to see it back at least. So it makes me wonder, what other currencies they might bring back as well.
You're right. I do think this is a big indication of what Legion will be like, but we'll talk about that later on in the show. But really, it seems like they're trying to help people get through Hellfire Citadel, and there's a specific reason for that. Come this patch, they are also adding a mount for killing Heroic Archimond. And it is a mount that we've all seen before. Everybody thought it was going to the store, but here it is. It is this beautiful moose-looking thing.
Moose-looking thing's probably an accurate description.
It's awesome. I want this mount so bad. And everybody saw the images of it leak, about a month ago, and it was supposed to be a store mount, and it just blew up on the forums. People saying that's ridiculous. They don't want a store mount, first Legion mount, and it's on the store. But no.
Does it have the ability to fly?
Yes, it does.
Does it really? Where did
it just flaps its legs and then
just does this little spinning thing.
But yeah, this is the moose. You see it in the trailer for Legion. So it's definitely a Legion mount, and that's why everybody was so frustrated when they thought it would be on the store. But it's not. You get to kill Heroic Archimond, which I haven't even killed normal Archimond. I haven't even killed LFR Archimond, so I haven't even killed
LFR Archimond.
I've attempted it, and it did not go well.
It's when you join that group and you just see like 3 stacks of that buff, and you're like, oh, it's going to be one of these ones again.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it does look cool. If what, somewhat evil.
So that's a very cool looking mount. So they're also increasing the item rewards that come from Mythic Dungeons. Antenna and Jungle players who take part in Mythic Dungeons will have a chance to gain item level 725 pieces of equipment, which is what you get from Mythic Hellfire Citadel. That's kind of ridiculous, but that's cool, I suppose. And players who receive baleful items now have a chance to gain 695, and players in Mythic Dungeons will also have a chance to loot a new heirloom trinket that will scale to level 110. So definitely some interesting things being added as far as item rewards go. Getting Mythic level quality from Mythic Dungeons. I don't. What do you think?
I'll save it for. Well, I was gonna save it for the discussion, but I guess it's exactly, I think, again, what the game needs. There's a lot of people who are, imagine higher end content's there. There's some people who are stuck around this sort of area, around the sort of normal to LFR difficulty and things like that, and they might want to, have more to aim for rather than just completing content. If you can unlock more epic gear, if you can open the door to more epic gear, and that, give them more options for that sense of progression, put more steps, I guess, on that ladder, then, people will probably feel like they're progressing a bit more and feel more inclined to stick with the game a bit longer. So, again, a bit like, there's a nice carrot on the end of the stick, but it's also the journey's going to be nice because they're unlocking this higher loot along the way.
Good point.
So, I think it's good.
And the last thing being added in the patch is a very small section here in the notes, but it is Arena Season 3 is starting, which has a lot of people actually worried about the timeline here, because the average Arena season is about 6 months. So that would put our Legion off a little bit further than people were hoping, but there have been short, 16 weeks I think was the shortest. 16 weeks is probably the shortest Arena season, so may not be 6 months.
Well,
we'll see.
I guess the other argument to throw in a bit of optimism would be that PvP is just getting probably the biggest overhaul it's ever seen in its life. So there's they could cut, like you say, the Arena season short. There's no reason for them to say, Legion's coming out here. You've got 2/3 of the time. Right.
So Season 3, and it brings Battleground gear up to basically the Honor gear is 715 item level, and the Conquest gear is 730, and then the Gladiator gear is 740. Jeez. So if you just do Battlegrounds for a week, you're going to be better than a Heroic Raider as far as item level, which is, that's awesome. I think that allows the PvPers to actually go in and get that mount as well if they want to. I think
that's exactly what I was going to say.
A good. I think that's a good thing for sure. I think because we'll talk about this again later, but I think that's moving towards the neutral PvP and PvE rewards as far as gear goes. That's not going to matter as much in Legion, at least with PvP. So they're trying to even it out.
I've just noticed in the chat that Moose 1892 said LFR Archimon doesn't drop less than 6 stacks. So,
very true. Very true.
Probably, yeah. I think I got to 5 once and we still hadn't downed him. It was that awful, but yeah.
And yes, Moose, we are going to be talking about that. Just give it time, my friend. Give it time.
Definitely, we've got that one covered, 100%.
Yep. So, with that is all about that patch. Anything else on that, Britzza, before we move on?
I thought that was going to be another Megan Trainor reference there for a second. All about that patch.
All about that patch. All about that patch.
I had to bring it up, otherwise you would have remembered. No, I think it's great. We'll talk more about it later, but I think this is exactly what we needed, really.
I agree. All right, so moving on. So a big game that I myself have been personally hyped about since last year. Overwatch Beta has officially been announced for October the 27th. Now, if you're wondering why we're talking about Overwatch, you must have missed last week's show when we said we're kind of covering all of Blizzard news for a bit. while there is lacking WoW news. Anyway, yes, back to Overwatch. Overwatch Beta, October 27th. This is huge. Everybody's been dying to hear about it, but the way the beta works may not make you as happy. The beta, strictly starting off, is going to be in US servers when it first starts, and it is going to be very closed. They want a small amount of players. They want
three people. They want 3 people to get
They want streamers. They want professional FPS players. Big community members are going to be the ones initially into the beta. Followed by event weekends, where they basically stress test their entire systems to see what it can handle, and they will let a lot of people. They want to get as many people in as they can for the weekend beta events. So if you want to play Overwatch, stay tuned. The first one of those weekend events will be coming shortly after BlizzCon. So that's very cool. But they said they wanted to keep a more traditional beta than their other betas have been in the past. So as much as I want to play Overwatch, I think it's a good thing that they're doing it this way. Instead of doing like a pay-to-enter beta or, just giving them out to random people at random times and then making other people jealous, I think doing just a very closed beta and then releasing the game maybe shortly after would be a good way to go.
Have they said anything about the content that will be available to the closed beta?
For the closed beta, they're testing everything.
So all characters are unlocked, all the maps are unlocked.
Yeah.
Right.
For the weekends, it's going to be a little bit more limited. They said limited maps. I don't know if it's limited heroes or not, but definitely limited maps.
My thought is, if there was anything that was locked, would it be like how the Heroes beta worked, where you could pay for them in the beta, but then you had to get them again?
Because they still haven't announced the pay model yet either, we still don't know how that's going to work for Overwatch. But I'm starting to think that since they still haven't talked about it, it may be just like a pay once type of game and get everything. That is starting to be my suspicion. That's how it's going to work.
And what people have been talking about, I guess, about the fact that it's only in US only. The expectation is, as you pointed out, that Europe and the rest of the world will see it sooner rather than later. I think, expect to see it before. Well, I don't know, maybe it's before BlizzCon, a bit ambitious to say it's rolled out to everyone else, or... Because I guess they would have announced it, wouldn't they?
It says they will continue to make preparations for Europe and Asia gameplay regions. Our goal is to have Europe come online next, with Asia to follow at a later date. So...
Could be any time. But, we'll get there. We'll get there. And I guess, we just have to... have you Americans test it out for us.
We are the most stable internet country, aside from Korea. But
I thought you were going to say you're the most stable internet community there for a second.
No, we all hate each other.
But and it'll be good actually. I think at the same time, people shouldn't feel like they're missing out because, it's at the end of the day, this game is again it's gonna be a beta. It's gonna be buggy as anything. You're going to probably need to have a relatively up-to-date system as well, and it's probably going to be a huge imbalance in heroes. And the thing is, you don't want to give up your time if that thing's going to annoy you. I would say.
To me, it's a huge relief too, because of all the games that are coming out this fall. Overwatch is not another one I have to worry about overlapping with like Fallout 4. So
yeah, that's it. It's nice as well just to have it because they had that fall 10 on the calendar for ages, and they got to the 18th. I mean, it's coming out 27th. This is the latest you could have pushed it almost, but they did what they said they were going to do, which is actually quite good, and that spells good for the development of the game. Nothing's behind.
Very good, very good. All right, so moving on to what Mr. Moose wanted to talk about in the chat. Announced, and wow, there is a new Murloc pet, kind of just thrown into the game. Britzza, you want to talk about the Murloc pet a little bit?
Yeah, so we'll get on to Pepe in a minute, and I've lost my place. We'll get on to Pepe in just a moment, but one of the things that has come out recently for WoW, when I can find it, is this Murloc pet by the name of Turkey.
You were really stretching that out there for a second. This one thing we're adding to
I'm scrolling through, trying to find my notes again. So you've got Turkey, who's
I think we're losing you in Skype here a little bit, Britzza.
System resetting.
Oh, am I back? I have no idea what happened at all. Just it seems the internet just decided to die on me. So, sorry, you were saying I was getting the beginning of that. You were.
Why don't you lead into it? I said happy Hallow's End.
Happy Hallow's End, exactly. That's exactly
my favorite time in WoW. Honestly, it's my favorite holiday.
So I guess just to quickly summarise before I cut off again, there's a new Murloc pet in the game by the name of Turkey, and there was a bit of speculation on how to get the pet. It now turns out you have to go to the Borean Tundra where there's a cave and you can get her. I think it's actually a her in that cave from a white Murloc egg. There's a lot of guides on finding it, but the big thing about this is that it's effectively a free pet, and it's actually quite rare to have a Murloc pet in the game. A lot of them aren't very accessible. If you think about it, you've got the ones that are locked behind BlizzCon. You've got a couple of others that I'm aware of, but I can't remember their names. So this is basically a free pet. If you've got a bit of time to pop down to the Borean Tundra and follow a guide, you're laughing. So yeah, they've got a nice little Murloc pet by the name of Turkey in there. And I guess to tie that in to the recent stuff about Pepe, Blizzard have been having a bit of a competition, maybe, to celebrate Pepe, I guess. And so on top of having Pepe plushies, which is what we all wanted in life, they've also released an I Found Pepe achievement, where you have to find 4 little iterations of Pepe in, Knight, Ninja, Pirate, and Viking form. And that basically what Blizzard did was they, on their page, and the link will be in the show notes, but what they did was they gave clues in the form of like riddles or something like that to where these Pepes are located. And if you find them all, then you get an achievement. And that's pretty nice. So
yeah, they've added quite a few things to Hallow's End this year, actually.
On top of everything else.
Yeah. So like they've added a new Deathwing costume, just like the Arthas one. Yep. This will make you look like the human form of Deathwing. A tiny Scarecrow costume. You can get heirloom stuff from Trick or Treat, like the heirloom upgrades. You can now get those from Trick or Treat bags, which is pretty cool. Actually, those are worth like 1,000 gold. So very cool on that. There's a few new quests. There's new wands. There's new disguises. So a whole lot to do, and you can decorate your garrison, which I am really excited about. You can get personal decorations, make everyone dress up. You can make all of your followers dress up. It's cool stuff, I think.
No, it definitely is. And I think one thing I wanted to ask you, Tarley, was do we think that... So I'm just playing around with the Twitch chat now. Do we think that there just should be more of this content, little achievements for the holiday seasons and things like that? Because if you think about it, Hallow's End and a lot of the other seasonal stuff has probably got a little bit stale in some ways, and I guess a lot of people have already got the achievements. But I say the people who are going for it have probably got a lot of the achievements by now.
Yeah,
so
I think.
Go on, sorry.
I think adding stuff to grind out, like the costumes or stuff like that, or different achievements, maybe even adding new dungeon bosses or something, is a really good way to help extend the time. And I mean, I think Hallow's End is still probably the one that people play the most because it has the most stuff to do, and it always has. And I think they need to kind of make all the other holidays as accessible, as fun as Hallow's End, and as unique. They need to all be unique, obviously. But I think Hallow's End is a good model for the rest of them to follow.
Do you think we're going to see Pepe every single year, every single expansion?
Yes.
I somehow think Pepe's going to be part of the lore. I don't know how, but I think they'll squeeze him. Is it him? Is Pepe him?
I don't know.
I don't know. No one knows. What is this thing in front of me? And now it's in plushie form. Admittedly, I didn't get too involved with Pepe and things like that. But I guess the thing I really like about this, even though I'm not necessarily taking part, is that I like the fact that they're just freshening up things like that. Like, I'd like them to do something when it comes to Winter Veil and just really sort of rejig the whole achievements, rejig a bit the storyline. And I don't want to see like the Iron Horde abduct, whatever the Father Christmas version is. But I'd like to see something a little bit different. And that would be a really good way of just keeping the game fresh. Because you think about it, there's so much seasonal content there that could really bring subscribers or keep subscribers more than bring new ones in, but still. So, yeah, I'd like to see a little bit more of this, and I don't know what I'd want them to do, but Deathwing costumes are always a good start.
Yeah. I'm just reading a comment here, probably reading it a little late. What are our thoughts on the huge player drop in WoW recently? We have discussed that previously, a couple episodes back, but it's kind of disheartening to see, but it's not surprising. It's kind of sad to see WoW dip so low, but it is a very lull in the game, so it's to be expected.
And I second that. I think it's not nice to see this game fall back towards the levels like other MMOs have subscriber wise. But one thing I would say is that whilst we probably should expect it to dip below 5 million when the Q3 results come in, I think Legion is shaping up to be the subscriber magnet that Warlords was, but never managed to stay as.
Right.
I think we will. I can see us perhaps going up to 8 when Legion drops, and 8 million is a pretty darn good number. And
Remedy, I actually do agree. I think Blizzard has just kind of taken focus away from World of Warcraft. World of Warcraft is not really their game anymore like it was a few years ago. They have, Overwatch is their big thing, or even Heroes of the Storm, or even StarCraft right now is getting more attention than World of Warcraft. So that could definitely be a reason for the subscriber loss, but really it is just a lack of content in Warlords that caused it.
Yeah.
And honestly, you'd think Blizzard catered to casuals too much, but there was hardly anything for casual players to do in Warlords, and I think that was a bit of the problem.
No, and every cloud has a silver lining. The main things to remember is that, thank God, when they were juggling whether to do Warlords or Legion first, they did Warlords and got that out the way. Because I think if we had Legion and then Warlords, that could have perhaps gone a little bit awry. But I think people will come back. I think there's a lot of competition. Let's be honest, the console market's now come into its own because most people now have an Xbox One or a PS4. So you've got those big titles coming out, which is taking people's time away. You've got other MMOs. You've got other games in general coming out. So the fact that WoW is still holding strong to a player base is even more of an achievement at these days. So I think one thing to bear in mind is that whilst the subscriber base may fluctuate and it may not go up to 8, it might not even go up to 7. Yeah. The main thing to remember is to have 5 million players in the end of 2015 means so much more than having 12 million back in 2013.
The game is 11 years old this year.
Exactly.
That's crazy. So,
and it's got stronger competition. So I'd argue, it's probably just as much success. Maybe not right now, but it will be just as strong a success as it was back in the old Cat days, the Wrath days. And there's no reason why it can't come back. So I wouldn't, it's not all gloom and doom.
Right. So anyway, back onto Hallow's End. I'm just excited because I mentioned in previous episodes before that Hallow's End was when I first time I ever played World of Warcraft happened to be when Hallow's End was happening, and so it's just nostalgia to hear the headless horseman riding around and all that. So it's partially why it's probably my favorite time in WoW. And this year I am going to get that Lich King set, which means I have to do all the quests every day for every day of Hallow's End to be able to get those 200 pieces of candy. And even though I'm going away on a business trip, I have a laptop. So
I thought you should say I quit work. Quit my job. I'm getting this if it kills me. Yeah. It's I think I might give it a go as well, so I'll feel very bad if I get it and you don't. I might give it. But no, yeah, and I want to get involved. I think Hallow's End is a great holiday. And is the Headless Horseman, does he still... Is it the same sort of events? Is he going around Karanos
setting fire to everything? Yep.
Setting fire to everything. I mean, he's not... Does he still do... Because if I'm right, there's still going to be events like in Scarlet Monastery. Was it in Scarlet Monastery there was a Headless
Well, that's where the
Horseman
dungeon is. Where you is in Scarlet Monastery. I don't know if there's anything there outside of the dungeon. It'd be worth
Oh, right.
The Wicker Man, though, everybody, especially if you're into RPing, you got to show up for the burning of the Wicker Man outside of Undercity.
I was going to say, I hope it's not the one outside. There's one outside Stormwind, isn't there? Or is it just one?
Probably.
You don't know, you could raid Stormwind, that army of Blood Elves you're keeping up there. Why not?
Definitely. All right, so moving on from that, anything else on all this before we move on?
Yeah, I will say there was one comment from Moose1892 a while back where he said apparently the 2008 blue Murloc egg from BlizzCon is selling now for about $6,000. So it gives you a sign of how rare it is to have a Murloc pet these days.
Thanks, Remedy, for following the stream.
Yeah, thanks very much.
All right, so moving on to the discussion of the week.
What's a Drenna anyhow? Can I drink it?
Discussion of the week.
So, we are at discussion of the week, and our discussion is going to be going back to patch 6.2.3, talking about really a lot of the dungeon changes and reward changes that Blizzard's bringing in with this patch, and what do we think about it, and what do we hope to see from dungeon content in Legion. First of all, just Britzza, do you want to go off on basically how you feel overall about these changes?
Yeah, we've already covered how good it is to have kata dungeons coming in. So I think that's going to bring a lot of people, back and really put some energy back into people, because there's just not, even the current time walking dungeons, there's only so much you can do. I think giving people more choice is much, much better. In general, though, I think they're really making the changes that how can I explain it? There's a couple of changes here that are clear corrections. Bringing back Valor, they're trying to just really correct a mistake here by giving people the ability to upgrade items, and because that's all Valor was really at the end of the day. You bought a piece of gear for so many Valor, and then you upgraded it with more Valor. So, there wasn't really much different in the mechanic here. They've just set a price for 10 eye levels, effectively. So it's nice to see they're bringing that back and correcting it. But in general, I'm really pleased that they're just thinking about how to use this older content. We've talked about this in the past, and just the fact that they're going to be bringing this back just means that WoW is going to feel more alive and more full than ever. It's nice when I'm doing things where I'm soloing, ICC and smashing through it. Not so crazy speeds, but yeah, I do want to go in with 4 other people at, not just 4 other people, but loads of other people at top level, and really, really, enjoy the content there. I don't know why I said only more than 4. It's only dungeons. I'm not talking about raids. Although I would like to see that. That'd be absolutely amazing. Can you imagine that? ICC.
Yeah, that would be really cool. Time walking ICC would be awesome. Or Karazhan. I think so many people would love to go to Karazhan. So, there's a few things that I like about this and a few things that worry me about this. So, I think it's really good for right now. It's great incentive to get back into the dungeons. It's good to see that Blizzard is giving actual rewards to go back to the dungeons, because the problem with Warlords is the dungeons got old so fast. As soon as you had done a few heroic dungeons, it was on to doing normal raids, and you never had to go back to them again. And they tried to add mythic dungeons, but there still wasn't enough incentive to do them. So they're giving us that incentive. They're giving us reason to go back and do the dungeons with Valor upgrades. And the new 725 chance at gear, that is pretty good. So that's cool that they're giving us incentive to do that. What I worry about with Legion, if it follows the same model, if instead of making new dungeon content regularly, that they just release the first set of dungeons, they'll be really good for a while, and then they just increase the difficulty and increase the loot that comes out of them over time.
Okay, I see where you're coming from.
So yes, it gives you a reason to keep playing them, but it's still not new content. It's the same content like we've had all of Draenor, running the same dungeons. It's nothing new. So that's my worry for Legion. I see that Blizzard is trying, they're listening to their community, they're adding rewards. But what I would like to see is continuing dungeon content through patches, like winged dungeons, like we saw in Wrath of the Lich King, or in BC, or in Cataclysm, all added in after the fact of the launch. They all were great dungeons, and they were all winged dungeons, being that the artist could just make the big art set for one place and then divide it up into 3 wings, making it 3 dungeons. And it was definitely doable, and it's something I miss seeing in the game a lot.
Yeah, no, I see what you mean. I do see what you mean there. And you're right, the dungeon content can, it's so easy for dungeon content to become stale. I learned that in Pandaria. I mean, those 4 same dungeons again, and then you go back and do the same 4 dungeons again and again and again, and then you find the escape into LFR, it seems, and that's a whole new level of pain. But I don't know. At the same time, I always thought with this new manpower they'd have in Blizzard, this army of developers they were training up during sort of the mist time and early in this content. I thought, well, is it possible that they could ever have dungeons that evolved through the difficulty? Like, so say for example, you do normal level, and then when you do the heroic version, the dungeon has changed substantially. And what I mean by that is, how like old Dead Mines and new Dead Mines work, if that makes sense.
Oh, you're right, yeah.
So what you do is you do it in normal, and there's a story to that dungeon. But then you go back and there's a story about the new guys in that dungeon. Maybe it doesn't have to be too materially different, but I don't know. You go into, you've raided a dungeon in Legion. You clear out all the inhabitants, like the Vicral or whoever are inhabiting it, and then when you go to heroic, the demons have turned up. So you've got to purify it from that end. So you're doing effectively the same dungeon, but it's cosmetically different. You don't even need to change the mechanics too much. You could have each boss, although they look different, have relatively the same mechanics, or maybe shake them up. That probably is the thing that does need shaking up, to be honest. But that's what I thought would be really cool, because then once you've gone through those dungeons so many times, you've got a fresh story. But what you say is also equally important. There's no point doing that if that's all that's left, because once you get into that heroic level and the mythic level, you're still going to keep doing that content again and again. So unless it's new content every patch, it's not going to feel good. So.
Well, and it's not like saying that the Warlords dungeons were bad by any means. They were some really, really well designed dungeons for Warlords. I really enjoyed doing them. I think one thing that could actually really help dungeons, and bear with me here because it's kind of out there, but I think they should cut LFR from the game. LFR almost completely demeans what dungeon content used to be. That should be your first step in gearing towards raiding, right? And if you got rid of LFR, then people would do dungeons more. They would be either grinding Valor again to get loot, or just getting the dungeon sets, a return of actual dungeon sets with dungeon set bonuses. And just cutting LFR out of the game would make dungeon progression seem more important.
Yeah, no, I agree. And as a LFR, a regular LFR user, shall we say, I have to agree. I think Blizzard is trying to do that, but it is very much now probably about ripping the Band-Aid off rather than peeling it off.
Right.
They keep talking about how they're phasing LFR out, how they're gonna, it was only ever supposed to be tourist mode.
Right.
That's all everyone talked about, and then it wasn't tourist mode. It was, like you say, a stage in the progression for raid content. And I agree. If you take that brick out, if you take that Jenga block out the equation, the whole system doesn't topple. You just got to fill the gap a little bit. Right. So, and that's what, like you say, that's what they're doing now. You do a bit of PvP, and suddenly you're a heroic raider. You do you do some mythic dungeon content, and you've done the normal content version of all the gear. So it's really. There's so much overlap. Like you say, LFR just doesn't have a purpose in all of that. It's just everything else has gone around it. So I agree. Maybe they'll just pull it away next expansion.
Or they could leave it for time walking raids. They could use the LFR system for that.
That would actually... I think that would actually be a brilliant idea for LFR, because that would give people more access to that content. Because I think that's the thing with time walking, is you need to be a little bit more organised. Possibly everyone's focused on the current content, and like you say, if I want to do Moose 1892 says time walking level 70 raids for Legion, that would be fantastic as a little event to go back and go into Illidan, or effectively what is Illidan's past, and you fight all those old bosses. But if you can do that as an LFR group, that'd be brilliant, because I do want to see that. I do want to go back to Tempest Keep and fight that, because I never got to do Tempest Keep when I was that back in level 70. I can only do it now when I smash through it all. So that would be really fun. So yeah, if there's a mechanism to help bring players together like that, just to experience that time walking content, I'm all for it. But I totally agree with you. I think it's lost its place in current content, definitely, and hopefully that's what they'll announce at BlizzCon.
And again, though, I mean, this patch really does show that Blizzard is listening to their community, that they are taking a step in the right direction with dungeons, and we definitely want to see more, and we'll definitely find out more at BlizzCon what they're going to do. I just hope they don't, make the same mistakes they made with Warlords, but I don't think they will. I think Blizzard kind of realizes what people want.
They have. And they are listening. I mean, this whole hushed lip approach just shows that they've realised how much they messed it up in terms of talking about their plans and then not actually implementing them. That's the worst thing you can do when you're building the hype train. So and you can see that's not just a WoW policy. That's pretty much every game policy in Blizzard. Overwatch is doing that perfectly, and I think they're learning as a company that they've got to really think about what their players want. They need to get people into this beta for Legion as soon as they can, to get people thinking about what the content is, whether it works, and be prepared to perhaps make those adjustments, because not just about dungeons or raids, although you won't necessarily see raid content. It's got to be what's going to bring back those millions of subscribers, hopefully. So, but I guess sort of spinning the dungeon question on its head slightly. We've talked about LFR. In terms of the current progression of loot and where everything fits in, I mean, do you think, like, for example, do we need another difficulty between, say, Mythic and Heroic? Or, do we need perhaps a difficulty that between Heroic and Normal to help people jump up content a little bit more?
I don't think so. I think there's plenty of a skill gap there, and I think, normal dungeons can be the really good way to teach people mechanics, simple, don't stand in this, don't stand in that, and then heroic versions make it harder, and then heroic dungeons, and then I don't know if they'd keep mythic dungeons or not. I don't know if having 3 tiers of dungeon difficulty is a good thing for progression.
Not if it's the same story. My argument would be, if it's different story, I'm all for it. But
yeah, I think maybe just 2 tiers of difficulty for dungeons work, because then the heroic could be just the next gap then to normal rating, like it used to be. Honestly, I think it was a good model in Wrath of the Lich King or even Cataclysm for how dungeons led you to rating.
Yep, I see where you're coming. And the thing is, with going back to the overlap question, we are seeing a lot of overlap where once you get to the end of dungeons, you're higher than the raid tiers, and that doesn't make sense from a story perspective,
right,
because that's the disjoint. If you think about progression as a player all the time, next thing you know, you've skipped half the raid content, but in narrative that doesn't make sense, because you shouldn't be more powerful than the first tier of bosses, right? So the other question would be, do they move raids up? Maybe. So do they just make the raid content just harder in general? But like you say, they've got to get rid of LFR probably to help that transition. So
right. Well, and it's not. It's more dramatic now than it probably will be in Legion, because we've seen the same dungeons. So it doesn't make sense story-wise why these old dungeons are making us stronger than the raids. But if they're periodically releasing dungeon content as well that releases higher item level, then it would make more sense. So at least lore-wise, because like you said, it just doesn't make sense. There's this weird overlap where the dungeon content is getting you more gear than the raids were. So.
Yeah, how's bashing the Lich King's Goonies helping me to become more powerful than the Legion? It doesn't it doesn't make sense. But at the same time, do you think perhaps as an alternative, do you think it would be cool if Blizzard spent a bit of time adding a dungeon in the theme of previous expansions? Because that's something I saw on the community sites, that perhaps it would be cool if they introduced a new Wrath dungeon to sort of, tell a story that wasn't told, or to, just bring that lore alive a little bit, and also just really get a buzz going for that content again. That
would be really awesome, but I don't see it happening. That is such a cool idea. It would be really cool to see something like that. I just really doubt they would ever do that.
Because that's, I mean, with the Wrath content in particular, there's so much of Arthas' story that just wasn't covered in WoW. And, they really did a good job of bringing the Jaina's side of things alive. But I'd be interested in hearing more about, Uther's backgrounds when he was a ghost floating around, ICC and things like that. What's happening there. Even if they brought back scenarios, maybe they could do some expansion-specific scenarios and slap them into the end of it. I don't know, but that's what I'd perhaps like to see, maybe.
That would be cool.
But
I think we'll see that Wrath stuff probably when we go back to Northrend to fight Bolvar, and they'll redo the whole continent and all that. So,
I agree. Yeah.
All right. Well, any more on this discussion topic before we move on?
No. I'm really excited. There's going to be some fresh content, and I guess we can only wait for BlizzCon, can't we? So, thank God that's only 3 weeks away.
Indeed.
What about you?
I have nothing more on this patch or on this discussion topic. I am just excited to find out more at BlizzCon because it's everything we talk about now has been speculation, pure speculation. So I'm really excited to learn about it at BlizzCon. And come 2 weeks from now, we will have our show completely predicting BlizzCon stuff.
That's it. I think we're actually going to get cited during the opening announcement. I think they're going to say Geeks of Azeroth had a great idea and we've put it in. And Blizzard, if you are listening, the secret to 12 million subscribers is more moose mounts.
More moose mounts. Different colored antlers, just whatever you got to do. More moose mounts.
Title of the show.
Yep. Episode 56, more moose mounts. All right. Well, moving on to the final segment of the show, it is time for Heroes Call. That's right. Heroes Call, where we give shout-outs to anybody we'd like to give a shout-out to. And I would like to give a shout-out to quite a few people, actually. Everybody who joined us in the chat room today. Thank you, Remedy. Thank you, Moose1892. Thank you, The Willer. And thank you, Growthy080. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, but thank you all for tuning in and chatting with us today. I definitely appreciate that. What about you, Britzza? Any shout-outs?
As usual, shout out to the beautiful people listening around the world. And actually, you do. Have you got any other shout-outs? I've just remembered one.
No, go on.
Hang on, bear with me a second while I talk. Have we got like elevator waiting music or anything like that? Go on, Tarley, stand-up act.
What did the Murloc say when he ran into the Blood Elf?
I don't know. Yeah. It's actually quite good. I want you to tell that one at BlizzCon and film people's reactions. I wanted to give a shout out to on Twitter, Faye Mercurial, Aussie Geek Show, which is a new show that's come out in Australia, and at Twitch TV Gaming, at Geeky Enthusiast, and at Twitch Raid, because apparently we're all going to band together and take over Australia streaming, which is
awesome.
Cool. We're not, but it's nice to be included. So yeah, big shout out to you guys, and again, thanks to everyone listening. It's been fantastic having you all.
Of course. So, yep, thank you everybody for listening. You can always check out our show on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, and Twitch. You can check us on Twitter at Geeks of Azeroth. And you can find me personally at Tarley_pause. And where can we find you, Britzza?
You can find me at Britzza_EG.
And you can find our long-lost compadre, Zulgeek, at Zulgeek. And we're going to start something on Twitter. Starting this weekend, we are going to start hashtag Where's Zool. And we are going to start this until he joins us again on the show. So everybody tweet something out, hashtag Where's Zool. We're going to get that trending, #1 trending in the world. So.
I can see it now. You know, Ellen thought she broke Twitter. Wait till we do it.
So everybody, thank you for checking us out. If you have any questions, shout-outs, angry comments, if you want to comment about how Britz's hair looked today, send that all to geeksofazerotheg@gmail.com.
No, send them to at Tarley_pause.
No, you can send that to geeksofazerotheg@gmail.com. Also, go to epicgeeks.co.uk. That is our website where we have all the content that we produce, which has also been redesigned very recently. We've got forums that you can sign up and we can talk all about Geeks of Azeroth stuff. And you can also check out the show, Geeks of Nexus, if you're a fan of WildStar, which just went free to play, and it is really fun to play. I've been playing it myself. Check out Geeks of Nexus, the WildStar show, also on Epic Geeks.
And a special shout out to them, actually, very quickly, because they just got into the top 300 list for UK gaming talk shows. So, yeah, huge shout out to them for getting that little milestone. Awesome. Good job, guys. And anyway, I hope everybody has a great week in WoW. We will see you here, same time, same place next week. Bye-bye. Yarr!
Yarr!
This podcast is part of the Epic Geeks Network. To find out more about our other gaming podcasts, head to epicgeeks.co.uk.